I built this house with my own hands, hoping it would keep the family together. But in the end, it became the reason my daughter wanted me gone. That night, I walked to the kitchen for a glass of water. Then I heard whispers from the living room. I froze, my heart pounded. It was Caitlin, my daughter. "You're right. Dad can't take care of himself anymore. This house is too big, and it's worth a lot. If we sell it, life will be easier." Each word cut deep. Then Jeremy, my son-in-law, spoke through the phone, firm and cold. "Put him in a nursing home. It's the practical thing to do. I've already worked it out." Cold sweat ran down my palms. Just a few steps away. Yet I felt like a stranger outside my own home. This house, the bricks, the wood, every corner I built. The place where Ellen and I raised Caitlin. Now reduced to nothing more than a price tag. I wanted to burst in. I wanted to scream. But my feet stayed nailed to the cold wooden floor. The next morning, I sat at the oak table I had crafted years ago. That table had held countless family dinners. It had carried Caitlin's homework when she was just a child. On its surface, I placed a white envelope. With shaking hands, I wrote, "For Caitlin and Jeremy." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just left that letter and walked away. Because sometimes, letting go isn't losing. And that letter, lying on the oak table, was what left my whole family in silence when they read it. My name is Robert. I'm in my 60s, a carpenter. These hands, worn and calloused from wood. But with these very hands, I built the place I call home. They say a house is just 4 walls. To me, it was my whole life. I laid every brick, cut every piece of wood, framed every window. Not to brag, but to keep a promise to Ellen, my wife, who stood by me when we had nothing. I still remember the first day I brought her here. The walls were bare, the floors covered in dust. Ellen looked around, then held my hand. She whispered, "You're not just building a house, Robert. You're building a family." From that day on, every corner carried a piece of us. The small kitchen, filled with the smell of toast each morning. The green armchair, where Ellen sat reading her books, while I shaped wood quietly at my workbench. And the oak table, the heart of the home. That's where Caitlin did her homework, where she showed me her first A, where we shared dinners, with her eyes shining bright. Even now, those memories choke me up. Then Ellen passed, after a short illness. Since that day, the house has felt too big, too silent. I'd sit at the oak table, alone, my hand resting on the cold surface, as if searching for the warmth that once lived there. Maybe other men my age feel the same, losing the one they love, and holding on to a house as the last refuge. What I feared most wasn't being alone. It was being treated as a burden by my own family. I still had Caitlin, my only daughter, and I told myself, as long as she's with me, I haven't lost everything. I gave her everything I had, every tuition payment, every hot meal, every word of comfort when life knocked her down. The day Caitlin married Jeremy, I was proud, but uneasy. Jeremy was polite, charming, but his eyes always lit up whenever money came into the conversation. At first, I thought it was just a young man's hunger to get ahead, but slowly, his words planted seeds of doubt in me. This house must be worth a fortune by now. If you sold it, you'd have a huge retirement fund. Caitlin would hear him and just force a smile, her eyes falling to the floor. I noticed, but I stayed silent, because I wanted to believe. My little girl was still the same one who once ran circles around that oak table. To me, this house was never just an asset. It was where Ellen and I began, where I watched my daughter grow. The staircase that still creaks, we laughed as we painted it. The wedding photo on the wall, Ellen in her simple white dress, and me holding her in front of the doorway I built with my own hands. I once thought, when my time came, I'd take my last breath here, surrounded by the smell of wood. So Ellen, wherever she is, would know I kept my promise, to keep our family's flame alive within these 4 walls. But in recent years, I felt the distance growing. Caitlin no longer stayed long to talk. She'd often stand up quickly. "Dad, I need to go. Jeremy's waiting." Family dinners became fewer, shorter. One evening, sitting at the oak table, I brought up how Ellen loved that armchair by the window. Caitlin went quiet, then softly said, "Dad, you can't stay in this big house forever. You should think about a retirement home." I looked deep into her eyes, searching for real concern, but all I found was avoidance. I told myself, she's just worried about me, but deep down, a small crack had begun to form. I tried to hold on to that belief, until one night, I overheard words that shattered every illusion I had left. The winter wind slammed against the window frame, howling in long, thin breaths. I woke, thirsty. The house was silent, only the clock ticking. I shuffled down the hallway. Then I heard whispers from the living room. I stopped cold. It was Caitlin, my daughter. "You're right. Dad can't take care of himself anymore. This house is too big, and it's worth a lot. If we sell it, we'll be comfortable." I stood there, frozen. My heart raced, cold sweat on my palms, though the night was bitter. Then Jeremy's voice came from the phone, flat, certain. "I've worked the numbers. Sell now. We can pull in nearly $1 million. Put him in a care home. Neat solution, and frees up capital. It's the most reasonable decision. $1 million. Those numbers struck like a hammer to my chest. 40 years of memories, reduced to figures for them to split. I turned to Caitlin. Her head bowed, her hand clutched her sleeve, her lips trembled. I waited for her to object. For one single sentence. "No, don't say that. This is Dad's home." But her voice shook, choked out. "I understand. Get it ready." My world collapsed. I wanted to rush in, to scream, but my feet felt nailed to that cold wooden floor. I stood in the dark, listening to my daughter speak. Memories flooded me, hard and quick. Her at the oak table, brow furrowed over a math problem. The choked hug on her first day of school. The voice calling, "Daddy," when I came home from the workshop. Those images, now distorted by reality. She was planning to move me like old furniture. I returned to my room, heart heavy as stone. The house was dark, but I understood clearly. I had lost my daughter long before I admitted it to myself. I sat at the oak table, a cold cup of coffee in my hand. Sunlight cut through the window and hit our wedding photo. Ellen still smiled there, gentle, calm. "Robert, are you holding on to the family we dreamed of? Or just the shell?" I could almost hear Ellen's voice in my head. If Ellen were here, what would she say? Maybe she'd tell me to forgive, to try to bring our daughter back. But inside, I knew last night's silence was a choice, and they had chosen the other side. After that night, everything looked different. Jeremy called from inside my house, talking numbers. "If we sell fast, we can invest in that land parcel." Caitlin sat there, eyes down, saying nothing. Once, I left the room and saw Jeremy stuffing papers into his briefcase. Caitlin flinched. Our eyes met, hers filled with panic, and then she looked away. I asked her gently, "Caitlin, have you ever thought how you'd feel if one day I wasn't in this house anymore?" She forced a smile, voice small. "Don't overthink it, Dad. You need to rest. Let us take care of you." There was no warmth in those words. It chilled me to the bone. Night after night, I tossed and turned. I wanted to believe Jeremy had put words in her mouth, that she was lost. But if she truly loved me, how could she remain silent? I started a journal, pages of messy questions. Where did I go wrong? Did I spoil her? Did I make this house a burden for her? Maybe men in their 60s understand this. The thing you protect most, family, can be the most fragile. You spend a lifetime guarding it, and a few whispered lines can make it vanish. One evening, I overheard Jeremy in the kitchen, saying to Caitlin, "If he objects, we'll get a lawyer. These documents will prove our case." I stood in the hallway, drenched in sweat. They weren't just talking. They had a legal plan. That moment hit me like a bell. My time was running out. That night, I sat at the oak table. I spread a blank sheet of paper. My hand shook as I picked up a pen. I looked around the living room. Our wedding photo, the empty armchair, Ellen's curtain I used to hang. Everything remained, but the family was gone. I began to write. "Caitlin and Jeremy, I heard everything. I won't fight you. I won't claw or beg. But there is one thing you must understand." The words spilled out like blood from a wound. I wrote in silence, the only sound the pen scratching the page. I put the pen down, my chest hollow. I once thought losing Ellen was the worst pain I'd ever feel. Now I realized there was another kind of sorrow. Losing someone while they are still alive. That was when I knew the real crisis had begun. Since that night, I heard it all. This house has never been the same. The four walls still stand. The oak table is still there. The green armchair still rests in the corner. But the air feels different. Everything has turned into a weight pressing on my shoulders. Caitlin and Jeremy still come by, but the carefree smile of my daughter is gone. The warmth of my son-in-law, gone. All that's left are averted eyes and hollow embraces. Each visit twists my chest. Part of me wants to pull Caitlin close. Another part wants to cry out, "Are you really doing this to me?" But I stay silent. One morning, on the porch, I overheard Jeremy on the phone. His back turned, voice low but clear. "The broker says this place will fetch a good price. If we push the paperwork, 3 months, and it's done." My heart clenched. This wasn't talk anymore. It was action. Days later, Caitlin held a thick stack of papers. I asked softly, "What are you carrying?" She startled, hid them behind her back. "Just some insurance documents, Dad." I looked into her eyes. Once they sparkled like starlight. Now they trembled, clouded. Not the eyes of a daughter sharing truth, but the eyes of someone lying. From then on, my meals grew smaller. Dinner became a monologue. I sat at the oak table, tapping lightly, the way Ellen once did while waiting to serve. But no one answered. Nights were long. I'd stare at the ceiling, thoughts spinning. Had I failed? I promised to protect my daughter. And now she was the one trying to cast me aside. Maybe men my age know this feeling. You think your children will be your anchor after your wife is gone. But even that bond proves fragile. One evening, I tried to reach her. I made Caitlin a cup of tea, set it down on the oak table. "Sweetheart, do you remember how your mother used to sing while she cooked?" She nodded, gave a faint smile. "I remember, Dad." I searched her eyes, then asked quietly, "If one day I wasn't in this house anymore, what would you do?" Her eyes glistened. For a moment, I thought she'd break, that she'd beg me never to leave. Instead, she turned away, her voice fading. "Don't worry, Dad. You need rest. Let me take care of you." I forced a smile, but inside I knew. "Let me take care of you" wasn't comfort. It was a sentence. I had become a burden. Jeremy stopped hiding. He brought a broker to the porch, pointing, gesturing, as if this house was already his. Through the window, I saw his grin, his hands waving. To him, this was merchandise. Nothing more. Caitlin stood by, eyes down, twisting her hands. I wanted to shout, "Doesn't this hurt you?" But my throat locked tight. One night, Jeremy sat in my living room, on the phone. "If it sells, we clear all the debt. Nearly $1 million. Enough to change everything." I walked in, looked straight at him. "This is my house. Don't talk about selling it in front of me." Silence. Caitlin jumped up, panicked. "Dad, he's just running numbers." I cut her off, my voice shaky but firm. "Numbers that include sending me to a nursing home?" Caitlin froze. Jeremy forced a calm tone. "You've misunderstood." But I saw it. The quick glance he shot at her. The flicker of panic. I wasn't mistaken. After that, the air grew heavier. Caitlin avoided my eyes. Jeremy acted overly polite, as if covering tracks. I felt myself pushed out of the very home I had built with my own hands. I walked the hallway, touching everything. The creaking staircase. The window frame Ellen used to wipe clean. The wedding photo on the wall. I whispered, "This isn't just a house. This is love. This is my life." But the silence swallowed it whole. Back at the table, I took pen and paper. Each night, I scribbled lines I wasn't sure were for Ellen, for Caitlin, or just for myself. I kept my promise, Ellen. I kept the house, kept the memories. But now, our own daughter wants to sell it. What am I supposed to do? Ink blurred with tears. I had never felt so weak. One evening, on the porch, I heard Jeremy whisper, "If he resists, we'll call the lawyer. These papers give us the right." I stepped back, heart pounding. They had a legal plan. No longer whispers. It was fact. I knew then, if I stayed silent, I would lose everything. That night, at the oak table, I laid out a blank sheet. My hand shook. I looked around. The wedding photo. The empty armchair. The curtain Ellen once washed. Everything still there, except the family. I began to write. "Caitlin and Jeremy, I know everything. I won't fight. I won't claw or beg. But you must understand this. Some things, once sold, are gone forever." I paused, drew a long breath, then added, "And if that day comes, I will not stay silent." The tension in this house was like a string pulled to the breaking point, and I could feel it. The snap was coming. That afternoon, the sky was heavy, gray, clouds thick. The wind howled through the trees outside the porch. I knew a storm was coming, not just outside, but inside this house. Caitlin and Jeremy walked in, carrying a thick folder. I caught a glimpse of the cover. Property transfer agreement. My heart sank, but my face stayed calm. Jeremy laid the papers on the oak table, the table that had been the heart of our family for decades. His voice steady, coated in false kindness. "Mr. Robert, we've discussed this carefully. It's just paperwork. Once you sign, you'll have a comfortable place to live. Good care, nothing to worry about." I looked at him, then at my daughter. Caitlin's head was down, her hands trembling. I waited, for a shake of the head, for one word of protest, but there was only silence. I placed my hand on the folder. It felt cold. Then I raised my eyes, my voice low. "You think I don't know?" Caitlin flinched, eyes wide. Jeremy frowned. "Sir, what are you talking about?" I slammed my hand against the table. The sound thundered through the room. "I heard everything. The plan to sell this house. The whispers about a nursing home. Every word. You forget how thin these walls are." The air cracked open. Caitlin broke down, sobbing. "Dad, Jeremy's face went pale. Then he snapped back, forcing calm. "You misunderstood. We only want what's best for you. This house is too big, too empty. Selling is the logical choice." I stared him down, my words sharp. "To you, this is property. To me, this is my life. Every beam, every brick. Sweat, love, memory. You think you can put a price on that?" Jeremy slipped, his voice too quick. "The contract's already done. The broker just needs your signature. You can't stop it now." Caitlin whipped around, stunned. "What, contract? When did you—" He stammered, scrambling. I was just planning ahead." Too late. Tears poured down Caitlin's face. "You hid this from me? You mortgaged my father's house without telling me?" My chest burned. This was the moment I had waited for. The truth laid bare. Silently, I opened the drawer, took out a white envelope, placed it on the oak table, beside the cold folder. "I already wrote this. It isn't a contract. It's my last word to you both." Caitlin's hands shook as she unfolded the letter. Through sobs she read, "Caitlin and Jeremy, I know everything. I will not fight. I will not beg. But understand this. Some things, once sold, are gone forever. This house is not just an asset. It's your mother's love, your childhood, my life. If you truly need money, take it. But don't let greed strip away the soul. Because if it does, you'll be left with nothing. Nothing but emptiness." The room fell into heavy silence. Only Caitlin's choked sobs filled the air. Jeremy's fists clenched, sweat beading on his brow. I spoke quietly, steady. "I won't sign. And I won't fight either. If you decide to sell, I'll leave. But remember this, I won't be leaving because I lost. I'll leave because I choose. To protect the last piece of love left in this family." Jeremy's voice rose, harsh, his face red. "Old man, you're stubborn. Who clings to a rotting house? Sell it, change your life. That's what's smart." I stood, eyes locked on his, my voice cold as steel. "Smart? You call betraying the man who raised your wife for 40 years smart? No, that's foolish. Because you may gain money, but you'll lose the only thing you can never buy back. Respect." Caitlin wailed, tears streaming. "Dad, I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't know what to do." My throat tightened. "I don't need money. I just need to hear the truth. That I am still your family." Caitlin opened her mouth, but Jeremy's hand clamped over hers, gripping tight. He cut her off. "Enough. You have no power here anymore." My heart shattered. I turned, pulled the small suitcase I had packed. Inside, just a few clothes, a photo album, and the wooden mallet I'd used my whole life. I set the house keys on the oak table, beside the letter. A final symbol. I looked at Caitlin one last time. "I'm not leaving because I'm weak. I'm leaving because I won't let hatred destroy what's left of us. If there's even a spark of love left, hold on to it." I pulled the old suitcase and stepped onto the porch. The winter wind cut sharp against my skin. Behind me, Caitlin's voice. "Dad, please, don't go." I froze, but I didn't turn back. I knew if I looked at her, I'd lose the strength to leave. So I drew in a deep breath and walked on, leaving behind an entire lifetime of memories. The bus stopped at the corner. I sat down, clutching the suitcase tight. Inside, just a few clothes, an old photo album, and the wooden mallet I'd used my whole life. The only two things I chose to carry, fragments of my soul. Through the window, I watched the house shrink, until it disappeared, and with it, a part of my heart. Inside, Caitlin stood frozen at the oak table. My letter, my keys, left beside the unsigned papers. She picked up the keys. Cold, heavy. "Jeremy, what have we done?" she whispered. Jeremy forced a calm voice, though a vein bulged on his forehead. "Don't get soft. He'll be fine. We did what had to be done." Caitlin's eyes burned red. Had to be done? My father walked out with shaking hands and left the keys right in front of us. "You still don't see what we've done?" Jeremy stayed silent, but the greed in his eyes, still alive. The bus swayed. I leaned my head against the cold glass. Faces of strangers around me, and I realized I had officially become homeless. At the last stop, I rented a cheap room. Cracked walls, a bed that creaked. But at least, no trace of betrayal. I opened the photo album. Ellen smiled back at me, hair loose in the wind. I whispered, "Ellen, I kept my promise. I didn't let the house become a commodity. But the price was losing our daughter." A tear fell, blurring her face on the page. Back home, Caitlin sat all night with my letter, reading every line again and again. "If you truly need money, take it. But don't let greed strip away the soul." Each word cut deeper than a knife. She remembered the nights I sat with her over math homework, carrying her in my arms through fever, stitching her doll back together in silence. Jeremy stormed in, voice sharp. "How long are you going to cry? Him leaving just makes this easier." Caitlin lifted her head. Her eyes, no longer the same. "You don't understand. I don't want the money. I want my father." The fight exploded. Jeremy slammed the table. "We've come too far. You can't back out now." Caitlin screamed, her voice breaking. "Then go alone." I lost my mother. Now I've lost my father. I won't lose myself too. Jeremy froze. He never expected his greed would push his marriage to the edge. Meanwhile, I tried to adapt to the small room. Went to the market, spoke with old men. Someone asked me to fix a broken chair. They knew I was a carpenter. For the first time in weeks, my hands felt useful again. The hammer striking wood reminded me there was still life to live, even after so much loss. I kept writing in my journal, not just pain anymore, but a hint of hope. Maybe losing a family doesn't mean losing everything. At least, I still have myself. One afternoon, a knock at my door. I opened it. Caitlin stood there, eyes red, face worn. "Dad, I'm sorry." I froze. Seconds passed like a lifetime. Then I sighed and let her in. She looked around the bare room and broke down. "You left because I was weak. I didn't protect you. I was afraid of losing him, afraid of losing stability. And I forgot you were everything to me." I held her hand. My hand trembled, but still warm. "I don't blame you. Just remember, money can be lost and earned again. But once you lose family, there's nothing left." She nodded, tears falling. Weeks later, I heard the news. Jeremy was gone. Debts caught up. The contract collapsed without my signature. He vanished, leaving Caitlin alone. I didn't feel joy, only sorrow. A man consumed by greed ends with nothing but emptiness. One evening, I stood again on the porch of the old house. The walls still up, the door still closed. But inside me, that house had changed forever. I was no longer its master, just a visitor to my own memories. Caitlin ran out, clung to me. "Dad, I've lost too much. But if you give me a chance, I'll make it right." I nodded softly, but I promised nothing. I knew some wounds take a long time to heal. I turned away. This time I didn't cry, because I understood. I had faced everything. I had chosen, and I had kept the one thing that mattered: dignity. I once thought losing Ellen was the worst pain, but no. The deepest pain is when your loved ones are still alive, and you lose them to greed and silence. But I've learned one thing. Sometimes letting go isn't loss. Sometimes letting go is how you hold on to the last good part of yourself. I sit by the window of my small rented room. Morning light filters through a torn curtain, spilling thin streaks of gold across the cracked floor. On the table, an old photo album lies open. Beside it, the wooden mallet, worn smooth by my hands. I pour a cup of black coffee. Bitter, but it keeps me awake. It's been months since I left the old house. Life here is plain. A bed that creaks. A ceiling stained with leaks. A draft slipping through the window. But in this simplicity, I've found something I lost long ago. Peace. Sometimes, Caitlin knocks on the door. She brings a basket of food, or small things she thinks I might need. Some days, she says nothing at all. Just sits quietly for hours, eyes red, watching me, as if afraid to lose me again. Once she handed me the album. open to a page of her, laughing on my shoulders. Her voice cracked. "Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me now. I just want to be your daughter again." I didn't speak. I just held her trembling hand, so different from the tiny fingers that once clung to mine when she learned to walk. I knew her regret was real, but I also knew some wounds take a long time to heal. At night, I often dream of Ellen. She's in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, humming the same old tune. When I walk toward her, she turns and smiles gently. "Robert, you did it. You kept the best part of yourself." I wake with tears on my pillow. I know it's only a dream, but it feels like she's still here, watching every step I take, and that gives me the strength to keep going. I once thought losing my wife was the greatest pain, but I learned something harsher. There is another pain, losing your family while they're still alive. Yet from that pain, I understood this. We are not only defined by what we hold on to, but also by what we let go. I let go of the house. I let go of the hope that things would stay the same. But in doing so, I held on to the most important things: my dignity, my love for Ellen, and the kindness still left in me. I believe many men like me will understand. We spend our lives building a home, keeping a family, but sometimes the very ones we love most are the ones who bring us to our knees. If that day comes, remember this: no one can take away your dignity unless you surrender it yourself. You may lose the house, you may even lose your family, but if you keep your decency, you still have yourself. I set the album down, lean back in my chair. Outside, children laugh in the alley. I close my eyes, and the sound blends with Caitlin's laughter as a child, perched on my shoulders, reaching for the sky. I smile, tears sliding down. The memory remains, even if everything else has changed. And maybe it is memory that carries us forward. I pick up the mallet, tap it once against the table. A dull, steady thud, a period to one chapter, and proof that I am still here, still standing. I take a sip of coffee, gaze at the morning sun beyond the window, and whisper to myself, perhaps to every man out there, we cannot choose how others treat us, but we always have the power to choose how we walk away.